Good day, listeners. You've tuned in to More Than a Funeral, Voices of the Red River Valley, powered by Corsmo Funeral and Cremation Service right here in Moorhead, Minnesota. My name is Tom, and I'm going to be your host today. And whether you are listening on your computer, maybe your phone, car, any other kind of device, and possibly even your tractor or combine, we welcome you here to today's episode. We all know there are so many funeral-related podcasts of interest dealing with so many various issues, but our focus is going to be on the personal aspect of relationships and the multitude of interesting people and organizations that like to call the Red River Valley their home. And on occasion, we might push the edge a little bit, discuss some of those controversial issues. We all know what we're talking about. Red Jell-O. Is it appropriate to serve at church potlucks anymore, or is it a taboo subject? And there's so many other things such as hot dish, casserole. What's the difference between the two anyway? So, we invite you to sit back for a few minutes, grab yourself a blistering hot cup of Lutheran Church coffee, and enjoy the conversation. We are glad you stopped by to listen. Good afternoon, listeners. You are tuned into More Than a Funeral, Voices of the Red River Valley, and this is episode number 4. And we have the pleasure today, well, by the way, my name's Tom, and we've got the pleasure today to be sitting in North Fargo in the warehouse or factory, or I'll call it a shop, of Hope Blooms. And I'm sitting here with Kelly Krenzel. And we've become familiar with Hope Blooms, of course, many, many years ago regarding flowers and such. But we were first made aware of Hope Blooms, and we think it's just a fantastic ministry. We'll give you some contact information here very shortly. But I do have to point out one disclaimer. If it sounds like we are sitting in a warehouse, we kind of are. It's a large building in North Fargo up off 7th Avenue. It's a big open space, extremely colorful, I have to add. And a lot of tables. There's a cooler that kicks in and cycles about every 5 or 10 minutes. So we're not making any apologies for the acoustics or anything, because we just love to be on premises. So again, I'm here with Kelly Krenzel. And Kelly, thank you for having us over.
Oh, I am so excited that you're here.
All righty. Well, let's just jump right into it. The name Hope Blooms, I can't think of a better name than Hope Blooms. You probably could have come up with like Flowers for Less, or recycled flowers, or Flowers or Us.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you about how you came up with the idea in a moment. But I don't imagine you were sitting like at Kroll's or a frying pan at 3 a.m. drinking coffee, and an idea came to you, and you said, hey, I want to repurpose some flowers. So tell us a little bit about how the idea originated and how you came up with the name, really.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. The inspiration behind Hope Blooms is really easily described through really 3 different major influences in my life. As a young girl, I spent every single weekend in the summer for 6 weeks, every week, not just weekend, with my sweet grandma Frida. So I, in a small town in Linton, North Dakota. So if you're familiar with that, it's about 60 miles south of Bismarck, where I'm originally from. But Grandma Frida was just the most lovely person you would ever have met, would do anything for anyone. And so just spending a lot of time with her really helped, I guess, foster my sense of appreciation and gratitude, and my deep, deep love and respect for seniors. And one of the things that we did together was garden. And so, as a younger person, it was much easier for me to get down and get my hands and knees in the dirt. And she had flower beds that were car lengths long. And so I would start on a Monday weeding her garden. And then by the end of the week, a Friday, I would be done going through all of her flower beds. And then I would take like the weekend off, and then I would start all over again. Cause
quality time with
those,
your grandma. That's cool.
Those pesky weeds, right? Yeah.
Well, getting down is the easy part.
I know. I've noticed that. I'm trying to train my kids now, but So I've just always had just a deep love and respect for our seniors in our community. And then, I watched her age, right, and go through different stages of her life, which definitely had an influence, and I can share a little bit more about that. But I also spent the better part of a decade, nearly almost a decade, working at a local hospice organization. And my job was to meet with patients and families and hear their life story and tell their story. And it just left a permanent imprint on my heart, spending time with someone in such a tender spot in life and hearing that it is really the smallest thing that we can do to help each other feel whole, even for a moment. Yeah. And that just is not lost on me. And I feel like that is really the major point to take away from the work that we do here at Hope Blooms, is making these small gestures add up and just can fundamentally make our community better, and it's in our control to do that. And there's fewer things. I mean, there's lots of things in life that happen, but very rarely just because in a beautiful sense. And then I became a mom in late 2015, and, you're a parent as well. And that just bursts your heart open in a way that you would never know. And so I looked at that little boy and I thought, what can I do to play an active, tangible role in our community that can help brighten someone's day? And so I've always been a more jovial person, and I've always loved people and kind of just married all those things. And of course the flowers have always been something that I loved, but I don't have any floral training or anything. But it was really like, I thought I was just going to do something nice for a while. And then because I was working full time, and I've worked full time up until a year ago, where I've spent 1 year here full time after almost 8 years. Okay. So, but I think that we can all leave the world a little bit brighter than it was the day before. And it's these small acts of kindness, I believe, that are going to fundamentally change our community and change our lives for the better. And so, I know I'm really, really good friends with a local florist here, Christy from Love Always Floral. And I brought the idea to her. I've like, thrifting has always been kind of like a love language of mine. I love to like find something that would maybe have been discarded and find a new life for it. And that's really the whole premise behind Hope Blooms, is how can we take things that maybe would have been otherwise discarded, and it still holds beauty, it still holds purpose, just as we each do, and we're each unique humans. And so to be able to give them new life, give flowers new life, and go out and just simply make people happy and remind them that they matter. So
you probably just described how you came up with the name.
Yeah. I mean, I just think I don't think that we can survive as humans without hope, right. And a sense of belonging, and that all ties into our mission, right? And then the blooms obviously come natural, but I can't even tell you when I thought of it, like, oh, this is it just can't, just your workshop stuff in your head. And maybe I was driving in my car. Sure. I said, that's where I get all my good ideas.
You didn't wake up and go like, I got it, eureka, I found it, this is it. It was a process.
Right. I served the mission without knowing that it was eventually going to be a nonprofit. Okay. I just did it in the basement. We set up 2 sawhorses and a piece of plywood and like a spare bedroom in our room. And my husband moved all of the furniture to the perimeter of the room. And so you couldn't even walk all the way around the table. And I just started, my friend who owns Love Always just started asking people who were buying flowers for special events or weddings and saying, hey, I'm not sure what you're going to do with those after the fact, but there's this cool new project in town. And then I would schlep all of that to my basement and slosh water all over.
So your husband was on board.
He is the sweetest. Yes, he is very sweet and forgiving and loving and patient. But also has a heart of gold, right? And totally believes in what we're doing. So
absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, so that's how we started, just very humble beginnings. And then after a while, I was like, I suppose I have to give this a name,
Right. Sure.
Because it kind of just kept snowballing, right?
So growing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you started in the basement or garage, basement, I think you said.
Basement, yeah. Yeah.
Where did you go? Did you then come right here?
Yeah, so we spent, we were probably operational for almost 2 years before we got into the space we are here.
Wow.
And so, like I said, my friend she's just the best. So she actually would let me, after a while, as the mission grew and we started to accept volunteers, like apparently you could only, invite so many strangers to your house.
Yeah, that's wise. That's wise.
But so she would let us use her flower shop on nights and
Okay.
weekends when she was not using it, and then I would get to invite volunteers there to help with the active repurposing and cleaning jars. But then that meant like taking all of the supplies, taking all of the flowers, creating the bouquets, and then taking all of it back plus the finished bouquets, and then I would deliver before work, after work, or on my lunch hour.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was for the first 2 years about. So we've been here probably about 6 years in this spot.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool. Are you then now here full time? I mean,
Yes.
kind of business hours, office
Yes.
hours? Because
Yes.
every time I've had to deliver flowers, 100 years ago, or
Yeah.
before you were full time, we of course had the code. We
Yeah.
would come in. You were kind enough to let us leave them on the table or put them in the
Yeah.
cooler.
Yeah.
Knowing you would come in and take good care of them here very
Yes.
shortly, we'd give you a call and tell you that
Yeah.
we're here. But that does just kind of let me talk a little bit about a personal experience, and then you can kind of tell me about how it works, if you want to
Sure.
call it that way. But my sister-in-law was in PAM, the rehab hospital, I believe it is, downtown, or excuse me, South Fargo. And of course, she was there for about 3 or 4 days rehab, and you always go down there, you hang out. I'm sitting there in the window well, just kind of looking at the traffic going by, and all of a sudden I see this little SUV pull up, and a lady pulls out with a box full of little arrangements, maybe about a dozen bouquets. And I go
Yeah.
I said, I know
I
what's going
know.
on. And what's really cool is that they brought a small one to her. And of
Yeah.
course, small is relative, but it's a perfect size for a hospital setting. It's not a funeral bouquet that's 3 feet
Exactly.
across.
Yeah.
It was perfect. And it came in, and she was there about 3 or 4 days. And I do remember clearly her saying, as we were getting ready to leave, she said, set these flowers, bring these flowers over here closer to me. She wanted them on the little table that was right in front
Yeah.
of her. And to me, that spoke volumes because that was somebody was reaching out to her and making, brightening her day, if you want to call it that. And so that's my own personal experience. But again, at work at Corsmo, of course, we had many people when we are talking about what you just said a moment
Yeah.
ago. What are you going to do with all these flowers? Like 18 of them here. What do you want to do with them
Yeah.
after you take them all? We say Hope Blooms, great organization. The majority of people are familiar with it now,
Yeah.
and that's kind of cool. And I got to admit, maybe just from a lazy standpoint,
Yeah.
it's nice to be able to put them all in one tub or tote and bring them all to one location.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, we had to take one to Eventide,
Yeah.
one to Manor Care, one to Aunt Flossie in
Yeah.
Northmore. We were
Yeah.
all over, so it reaches a lot more people. But tell me a little bit about, how the whole process works.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head too when I think whether the flowers are really that ultimate symbol of love, right?
Yes.
They're the physical embodiment of love, and sometimes can communicate things that words cannot. And so you hit on a couple of things. Number one, that in the respect that flowers a lot of times, just like music or some of the other artistic things in life, they like trigger memories, right? So we say that they're the keepers of memories. And being able to take a large funeral arrangement, which ironically that's the one time flowers don't feel like they are going to make you happy, and to
Agreed.
be able to take that apart and put, one funeral arrangement can, depending on the size of it, can maybe yield 2 or 3 bouquets. So when you think about that and, in context to the amount of smiles and joy that one bouquet can bring, and then it's also not sitting at front because Norman passed away and everybody knows that, he died. And that's like, honestly, the one-time flowers don't feel like they can generate that sort of joy.
We did feel, if I could interrupt, whenever I would take a large one single bouquet to
Yeah.
Eventide as an example, we'd come walking in and we'd look at the residents and they know what's going on. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, who died? Who's next?
Right.
And so please continue.
Right. And so like and that really ties into like, our mission and about half of who we serve. I'm kind of will probably eventually answer all your questions in a roundabout way, but about half who we serve are seniors living in assisted living facilities rehabilitation, memory care.
Yep.
And when we can repurpose those blooms into those little bedside bouquets, I think there's something so inherently special and sweet. And like you were there with your sister-in-law, right? But it was the fact that someone out there somewhere wanted her to have a better day. I think there's something so sweet and very powerful about an act of kindness extended to you by somebody you don't know, right? Like my community cares about me. And I just think like in our hierarchy of needs, we have safety, our basic needs, and our sense of belonging. And that's where Hope Blooms fits in, right? Is being able to foster that sense of community and to say, we see you, you matter, and you're going through a difficult time, whether that is, because you're facing some sort of hardship, you're facing isolation or loneliness, and you can be surrounded in a place full of people and still feel very alone. I especially think about our elderly folks who are living, in a senior living community. You've already had several stages in your life where you've had to give things up. In a largely rural state like ours, you've aged away from your home. You've aged away from your community. You've aged away from the people and places that you spend time in. That's a lot of loss, right?
Yep.
Can we bring a little bit of that outside in? And so like the flowers themselves are magical and we say they're our superpower, but it's the connection that we're able to weave. In a place like Pam, we don't get the opportunity to go to every single door with our volunteers because of HIPAA, right? And privacy. But there's many places that we do serve where we bring in a group of 10 or 12 volunteers and we go door to door. That's what we do.
Well, that's cool.
So we'll go to Eventide and we'll show up with, a bigger place like that. Yeah. Maybe we only have that day half of the flowers for as many people that are there. And we'll start delivering on, the first floor. And then next time we come, we start on a different floor. Yeah. So we're hitting those individuals, a couple of times a year. But it's the conversation, right? It's that sense of looking someone in the eye and saying, you matter, and just saying, how you doing today? Yeah. And just hearing what's on their mind. I mean, there's just something so special about that to me.
The flowers themselves are nice and they mean a lot, but it's the gesture, and that's kind of what you're alluding to.
Yeah, and the connection, right? That give you an opportunity to talk about what's been on your mind, or
Are you able to do that?
Yes, that's what we do.
I mean, you don't just knock on somebody's door and
say, "Here you
go. Here you go. Have a nice day."
No, I'm like, "Hi, Gladys. How are you?"
Oh man,
we're here to make your day and just remind you that you're special.
You're lucky you get to 2 people a day.
No. It takes us a while. When we go on delivery, we're gone for definitely a couple of hours, but we have some of the most remarkable volunteers. And I also think it ends up being almost like an art form, being able to strike up a conversation, because it's uncomfortable sometimes, right? Yeah. You're both vulnerable, but what does that look like when we are extending just that sense of joy and that sense of hope to people? And just, look at this lovely family picture on the wall here. Tell me about them. Just being able to pick up cues from the room. Yeah. I've seen lots of diamond dot pictures and embroidery.
That's
and
right. Color by number.
But and I think when you're in a spot and you've lost your sense of transportation or something like that, you don't necessarily, and you see the same people and same faces every day and have the same routine. It just is such a day brightener for people to just break it up and bring a sense of the community in.
And your volunteers, maybe they're trained, quote unquote, but you get the feel when you're talking to somebody, if they don't want to talk for whatever reason, to give them their space.
Absolutely. And not every person wants to talk, but we're respectful.
Yeah, but I did not know that in turn is blessing the volunteer who's bringing it, because I know from my experience of just meeting so many people, I've been blessed just kind of being invited into their lives just for a short period of time.
Absolutely.
But they are willing to share something that they might not have told their kids.
Absolutely. Yes. And we definitely, I think that happens a lot to our volunteers. It's just so interesting how you can knock on someone's door and just be standing there with a single bouquet and a smile.
Yep.
And how people are just brought to tears. Who sent this? And I'm like, your community did.
Right on.
because we're here because of our community, because of all the various aspects and ways that they support us. But it's really special, and to just see how many people are brought to tears, like this is for me, and it's not about the flowers, you know. And I just think like we can do that for each other.
Amen.
Yeah, and it can be joyful and fun, and yeah, hopefully inspire someone else to do something for someone.
So as I was looking through some of your information, you also go to homeless shelters, maybe not homeless shelters, but more than medical facilities.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, like I said, about half of who we serve are our seniors in the settings that I had mentioned before. But then we also serve. We partner with many other nonprofits here in town who are serving individuals who are facing some sort of hardship.
Okay.
So we deliver, for example, to the emergency shelter at the YWCA, the Perry Center, which is a maternity home for women. We deliver to all of our local recovery centers. We partner with Prairie St. John's, and we actually bring in programming there too. So we have 2 different programs that I can chat about here.
Please.
We partner with both of our local cancer centers. Like we delivered just over 900 bouquets to Roger Mears Cancer Center last year alone.
Crazy.
We partner with all sorts of other nonprofits. So in total, we partner with about 100 different places on an ongoing basis, and just try to identify those individuals who are just facing some extraordinary circumstances, and say, like, we partner with many food pantries, right? Like, what does it look like when your community shows up for you beyond basic needs, right? Because flowers are seen as something more frivolous or something more, not something you're going to spend money on, but like the sort of joy that this tiny little bouquet brings. And all of our flowers go out with the message of "You Matter." So that is on every single tag of the flowers that we deliver. So
tell me a little bit about your volunteers. You must have a huge payroll.
yeah. Well, if our payroll is measured in hearts and hands,
obviously
and
I'm joking.
Yes, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the volunteers you got.
Absolutely. And so we would not be where we are today if it wasn't for our wonderful community. So we have thousands of volunteers who come through our doors every year.
Thousands.
Yes.
Really?
So we host like 30 open volunteer events a month that have anywhere between 10 and 20 people at them.
Really?
And a lot of times those are different people. And so lots of people are helping with the facilitation of our mission. So when someone comes into the doors here at Hope Blooms, they get a tour, they get to experience firsthand that act of, repurposing those flowers. And then they get to experience a little bit of everything. So we use recycled food jars and pint-sized mason jars for our bouquets. And so if the place can have glass, and if we think that we're going to get them back. So we have a drop box, by the way, right outside of our door that people can drop those jars off anytime. So volunteers, when they come in, they'll help us. We'll go pick jars up and repurpose the same jars that we've been delivering in. So they'll help clean jars. They'll help prepare boxes for deliveries. They'll help cut the tags or cut the twine that goes around the tags. They'll help with different shop chores. We have our more regular volunteers help us with deliveries. We have volunteers that go out and pick up floral donations from our grocers. So that's same time every week, same 12 stores.
Kind of like the food bank, but the flower bank.
Yeah, exactly. And so just helping really with like a variety of different things. But I mean, I think it was volunteers spent nearly 7,000 hours last year and I know that we didn't even capture all of those hours. So we are very, very volunteer driven and so grateful for those the gift of time that people share with us.
What's your longest serving volunteer other than you and your kids?
Yeah. I would say there's probably a couple of them that have been here probably at least 7 years, 6-7 years. Okay. Yeah. And we've been around, we'll be 9 here in July. Right. So yeah, we're very grateful for their support. Okay.
Talking a little bit about support. You mentioned like where the resources are that you get your flowers, but
Yeah.
florists, grocery store
Yeah.
florists, whatever,
Yeah.
they obviously have a certain lifespan, and you've got a
Yeah.
system. Where do you
Right.
go talk to them?
Yeah. So, way back in the beginning, as you were mentioning, it kind of brought me back to the days when we would just get funeral
Right.
flowers,
They're probably a small part of what you get, really.
No,
Funeral
I mean they
flowers.
make up a good. We work with all of our local funeral
Okay.
homes,
Good.
and that is an option for families.
Yeah.
And we receive quite a bit of donated flowers, from our funeral homes in that partnership, which we're so grateful for. But about half of the flowers that we receive are from Hornbachers and Cashwives,
Hold on.
and so if they all have freshness standards, right?
Yeah.
And so like if the flowers have expired but they still look good, or if one rose is bad, that would have otherwise been discarded. And so we know that that's love in love in a wrapper, basically.
Right.
And so we'll go around to all of those stores weekly, and sometimes they might have one bucket, sometimes they might have a little bit more, but we have volunteers assigned to those routes, and they'll go and pick those up. We also work with local florists who are booking weddings or special events and things like that, or corporate events. And they let them know that, this is an option afterwards, or, couples who are getting married. We also have many gardeners who donate to us in the summer, which is a really cool thing because garden flowers are just so special. And, you can deliver flowers and then have somebody say, my wife used to grow those.
Yep.
That's where the memories come in. Or you think about our elderly folks, and it's like you've aged away from your beloved hobbies like gardening, like mowing your lawn. And so like they're just these beautiful keepers of memories. And so we are so grateful to have probably at least 5 gardeners that donate to us throughout the growing season. So it's like if there's like cut and come back varieties. And then we do have a wholesaler out of the cities that will drop some stuff off every now and then if they've got too much of something.
It's kind of like it's kind of like the milk in my fridge. It's kind of a little old, but it's still good. I'll drink.
Past the expiration date, bring it on over.
I'll drink it.
Exactly, that's still good in that.
Give it to my kids or grandkids. Here, this is just fine.
Yeah.
But there still is plenty of life in it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so then those donations get dropped off, and now that we have a cooler that looks a lot different. Before it was like drop everything. I was sending out emails to the group of people to say, please come here. We're gonna have an event tonight. Now we can work a little bit of ahead because we do have a cooler, and we get we have volunteers that come in and process those flowers, get them in fresh water, give them a fresh cut, and can help extend the life of those blooms.
Okay. So obviously, I'd like to talk a little bit about, way people can support you.
Yeah.
You've already touched on a number of things, and feel free to go off on tangents.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's flowers are the driving force. If you don't have flowers, there's no hope blooms.
Yeah.
But I noticed again in your literature, you ask for donations, whether it be the jars, or supplies of some type, and the volunteers. But what other ways can people? And of course, donations are nice too, because this is not free.
Exactly.
What else can you maybe suggest people can help?
Yeah. And so we are 100% community funded. And so that's through deliberate acts of kindness. And all of our supplies are donated too. So, the flowers, like you said, so, getting in touch with us, we've got information on our website about that, but also, recycled food jars, like around a pint size. So like the smaller, stouter pickle jars, a salsa jar. I would say a spaghetti jar is too big, but we take those clean, right? And if you can get the labels off, awesome. If not, we will try. We have volunteers. That's one job that you get to do when you come to Hope Blooms.
Boy.
You get to take labels off of jars, right? But it's really important to us to be able to use resources that already exist.
Right.
Instead of we could just go and order all the jars, and it's like, that's not a good use of our resources.
You wouldn't deliver a little nice arrangement with a ragu label.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we don't take assorted vases. And the reason is they are more fragile. They're more fragile. They also come in such a vast amount of different sizes. And so the jars, the pint size jars, they can be jostled around a lot. They can be reused a bunch of times. And then also I know then about how many bouquets I can make with that. And then we use like a small little plastic spice jar that we do order.
Sure.
if like when we're going to Prairie St. John's, you can't take glass, or sometimes
sense.
when we're going to memory care, you can't take glass.
Okay.
Or if we don't know that we'll get the vessel back, then we'll use that as a little more economical, but you can still get a big bouquet. That's what your sister-in-law would have got in their little plastic vessel, I bet.
But you bring up a good point. I mean, in City of Fargo, they don't recycle glass anymore.
Not unless you take it to the site.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I do in the summertime try to recycle it, but in the winter it just goes in the garbage.
Yeah.
We don't use a lot of glass.
Yeah.
But now you've given me an idea, what to do with that
Yeah.
salsa jar.
Exactly.
Like
And then we just have a patio box right outside our door that donations can be dropped off anytime. And then we also, we are in a shop environment, and, all of this joy making is messy business. So we go through garbage bags. Clippers are a huge thing. So we deliver 19,000 bouquets a year, if you can believe that, Tom. So think about how many times we're using our clippers. So the flowers get processed and clipped and cut the first time. Then they get cut when they go in the vase.
Right.
Think about how many flowers that come through our doors. Between all of the special events like funerals, weddings, corporate events, we repurposed almost 2,200 arrangements last year, and then just that many buckets of flowers too from our grocers and our gardeners. So when you can think about the amount of flowers, so clippers, Clorox wipes, paper towels, floor cleaner, anything you can think of, right? Because it becomes quite messy.
I can see that as I'm sitting here looking in your storage area. I see paper towels in there. How about when you deliver, I'll just say like 8 arrangements, do they go into a tote or do they go into a cardboard box?
Yeah, so you can see right there. So we use recycled produce boxes, grape boxes.
Yep.
And so I have one volunteer who collects those for me throughout the year. Bless his heart. He cuts the top off, and then they're like perfect, right? Because then the flowers don't have to be constrained in a box.
Yep.
They're low enough
and
sturdy enough. So he has to collect nearly 800 boxes for us every year in order for us to make our deliveries. Now that's my father-in-law, and he is such a sweetie. So he brings them over every week. Yeah, every week. But I mean, it's just like these small ways that people are involved that make a tremendous amount of impact. But then, of course, the most, precious resource of all is the financial gifts that help us quite literally bloom. I mean, I feel like, and when you make a donation to Hope Blooms, we stretch that impact dollar further because we are so innovative on reusing as many things. But you can't survive, unfortunately, on hope and joy alone. We need those deliberate acts of generosity from our community to be able to function. So
and here in a few minutes, we'll talk about things coming up like Giving Hearts Day, of course, is coming up, and you also have an event called Petals for a Purpose. That was fascinating to hear about that. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let me ask you, how do you see Hope Blooms growing? If it is going to grow, maybe it's at a perfect size. Just tell me what your thoughts are.
Well, we have grown, of course, over the years, and that's all been like an organic growth for us. I will answer that question, but I did want to talk very briefly about our 2 programs because those have grown as well. And so our Pedal It Forward program is probably the
Pedal It Forward?
Yeah.
like pet.
Yeah, you like a flower petal.
Okay.
Tom, you got to wake up pretty early to get anything past you. So that is probably the program that people are most familiar with. Like I said, that we go door to door and, knock on people's doors and they're not expecting us. They're all surprise deliveries. So that was the main way in which we fulfilled our mission for a very long time. So we still have that program, but we also have this newer program that we started last year called Flower Empower. And we actually take the activity out to those that we serve. So we go to an assisted living community, and we are working with, maybe 20 or so residents, and we bring enough volunteers for us to do like a 1-on-1, 2-on-1, and we kind of become their like instant buddy.
A service project.
Exactly. But there's just something so special, number one, about working with your hands. And then science and research actually tell us that when you are around flowers, you are 3 times happier than those people who don't spend time around flowers. It also,
Unless you're allergic to them.
yes, correct. That is a very good
Sorry.
point. They did not bring that up in the report, but they lower your blood pressure, they reduce your anxiety, improve your cognitive performance, and also your creativity. So there's actually feel good things that happen when you work with flowers and work with your hands.
I can verify that.
And then, you have that added sweetness of working side by side with someone helping you accomplish something. And you would think, okay, it's just flowers, but right? It is the act of connecting.
This individual, I'm sorry to interrupt, could be like your grandmother you were telling me about earlier that had a wonderful garden, outside of Wilton or somewhere and all of a sudden now she can do it
She
again.
doesn't,
It might be dementia, Alzheimer's, but boy, they can pick that up.
Exactly. So about half of who we serve, Tom, are men. And I'm sure it doesn't surprise you that many times the first time men receive flowers is at their funeral.
Yeah.
And so being able to bring those little memory keepers and that point of connection in. So I have to share a really sweet story. So that is Lawrence up there. He's like right under the Spreading Joy headline over there on our wall. He is right on the end on the right there. So a really fun impact story is we were doing a Flower and Power activity. And Lawrence was like kind of in his room, outside of his room. You could see he was in the doorway.
In the corner?
Yes. And I was like, you are so curious, Lawrence. And we had the activity set up, but a lot of times, our stoic men living, our elderly men are like, I don't need flowers. And we're like, Lawrence, you're almost out here already.
Yeah.
So we coaxed him out there, and he rolled up in his wheelchair and came up, and he took out his phone pretty soon after that. And so we have probably about 25 buckets of flowers and probably about 12 volunteers that day. And he pulls out his phone, he starts going through his phone. And he lands on the last bouquet that he gave to his wife before she passed.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said, can we make this today? And so it gave us the opportunity to talk to Lawrence about his wife and to share those intimate stories and to just connect over what is quite literally a symbol of love, right? And so we helped him recreate that bouquet as best as he could. And he got to take that back to his room and got to have that for a week or two. But what a beautiful thing. And so I just think it's just connecting with people in such a unique way. And we're able to pull so much out of them. And it's just interesting because when we go out and facilitate this program, the minute you start working with someone, they're like, no. And someone else tries to help them like that. She's my person. She's my person. Right. So we go to the VA and long-term care and do that. We've brought a patient safe activity where we pre-cut all the flowers and go in and work with different units at Prairie St. John's. We're going to many of our elderly facilities. And we've gone into re-entry programs. We've gone into recovery centers.
Jails?
No. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. Yeah, but
and for the bars,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's so sweet. So those are our two programs, which have grown significantly since our founding.
Wow.
And so I don't have any plans that I want to have another physical location.
You're not going to franchise or anything like that.
I mean, we've had lots of offers, but I want to do what we do well in the community that we're entrenched in. And I also know that we live in a very largely rural state. Yeah. And so what does it look like if we could push the bounds of that a little bit? So one day, my big dream, if we can raise enough resources and funding, would be to serve in about a 75-mile radius of Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, in all directions. Because what would that look like, right? Being able to go and visit people who are living in, some congregate settings and just be able to bring a little bit of joy. And what we have found, we've gone as far as Fergus Falls. So like on Veterans Day, we went to the Minnesota Veterans Home and did both of our programs there. And that was really beautiful. But our volunteers will go with us. So what does that look like? Yeah. We're bringing new people into communities and just spending time, just getting to know people and just loving on them.
So have any other organizations like Hope Blooms grown, no pun intended, based on them volunteering? Let's just say, I'll just pick town Valley City. Just pick on if somebody in Valley City hear about this, want to maybe try something like this?
I think I mean, yes, we've had lots of people interested in that. I don't want to do any sort of franchising or
No,
things
of
like
course
that.
not. But
Yeah,
people get
yeah,
the idea and they say,
yeah,
I can do that. And
yeah,
maybe with some of your guidance, but I can see it's a lot
yeah.
more work than I
It
thought.
is. And you know, when I tried for many, many, many years to be able to help as many people as possible. That's just who I am. I'm a helper. But then I also realized, okay, I won't end up having time to work on our very small nonprofit
Right.
too, you know?
Yep.
So I've had to put up a little more boundaries for that because you can get stuck into like a cycle of perpetual
Well,
misdirection.
and you have a family.
Right, I
Yeah.
do. My oldest son, Henry, is 9,
Okay.
and he was just 7 months old when I started Hope Blooms, and I worked full time. Like I said, up until a year ago, I had another full time job in addition to Hope Blooms, and then I have a little 6-year-old Finnegan.
Let's just kind of wind down. I know you've got some other things I know you want to bring up, but tell us a little bit about like Giving Hearts Day. That's coming up. This podcast is going to drop, as they say, February 1st, and so
Yeah.
Giving Hearts Day is coming up in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So tell us a little. I think that's fairly important to
Yes.
many nonprofits. But tell me about your thoughts on Giving Hearts Day.
Absolutely. So, Giving Hearts Day is an opportunity really for anyone to make an impact, especially on such a small charity like ours. So, that's on February 13th of this year. And it is just this beautiful day of generosity in our region. And I honestly, every Giving Hearts Day, I sit and cry because it's just like, how lucky are we to live in such a beautiful and generous
It's incredible.
community and region? And days like that leave an invaluable and intangible impact on such a small nonprofit like ours. It's the reason that we can operate, being able to garner those crucial funds that help us pay for unglamorous things, right? We need a space. We need people to do the work. And we believe that we're best suited for this sort of work. And so being able to help us get the resources that we need to continue this critical mission, like I said, it's not lost on me. There is a wonderful group of charities out there, and we're hoping that some people have us in mind.
So when you do take an arrangement somewhere, it has that little sticker that
Yeah.
says you matter.
Yeah.
But does it also have Hope Blooms on it
Yeah.
somewhere so people will know?
Yes, you'll know. Yeah.
Probably with your website too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which of course is hopeblooms.org.
Yeah.
So I can't throw that in often enough. But after maybe you've got a couple other things to share about Giving Hearts Day, some suggestions. I mean, my goodness, we a lot of these donations are double, I believe, for
Yeah.
Giving Hearts Day. And so my wife and I, we kind of make a list of how many we
Yeah.
want to. You'd love to give to all of them,
I know.
but we have kind of a list.
You
and,
do.
And you can still obviously donate throughout the year.
Absolutely.
But it's just incredible how many there are out there. And as I'm scrolling through the
Yeah.
charities,
Yeah.
nonprofits, go like, wow, that's a great one. Oh, that's a great one.
I
That's a great
know.
one.
And I find that too because now I have so many great charity friends too. And I think like that is what's special and unique about nonprofits in general is that we are providing these critical services for people. And I really feel like we're like the backbone of the community, right?
Yep.
Being able to lift people up through a difficult time. And regardless of what the charity is, there is a time in our lives where we needed that.
Absolutely.
You know, we needed some aspect of support that a charity was providing. But I of course am a little bit biased here at Hope Blooms, but I do believe that our mission has an ability to impact a large amount of people, and who can't use a little bit of joy, right? Who can't use a sense of hope.
Yep. And it goes beyond the individual receiving the flowers.
Absolutely.
It can change, I would say it can change their life, but it can change
but
their thoughts.
Tom, you say that, and I received a message from a woman who received a bouquet of ours when she was receiving services at Lakeland Mental Health, dealing with some mental health challenges, where she quite literally said, I couldn't believe those flowers were for me. I grabbed them, I clutched them, I took them to my car. When I read that the message you matter, I sat in my car for 20 minutes because I was making a plan to end my life. And I saw that message you matter.
Yeah.
And I thought that was for me.
Yeah.
she thought that was a sign.
Yeah. Flowers obviously can't heal bones or limbs or things like that, but it can help heal the heart, as you say.
Absolutely. And I just think like there's a time when all of us can use that message, right? But especially if we're facing some incredible circumstances in our lives where I feel like we hit people right when they need it. And it does leave an impression, and so a lasting impression to just know.
Moving on now, you told me a little bit about Petals for a Purpose.
Yeah.
There was something other just a moment ago. Pedal something else.
Pedal It Forward is our
Forward,
program. Yeah.
But Petals for a Purpose.
Yeah. So we have an annual spring fundraiser called Petals for a Purpose. So it's an in-person event, a gathering where we celebrate community and fellowship and raise awareness about Hope Blooms. You buy a ticket. You experience a massive amount of joy. We have some different games and things to play there. And then all of the tickets and proceeds come back and benefit our nonprofit mission. It is an event for both men and women. And someone who may have a heart for our mission, and a perfect place to introduce new people to Hope Blooms. And you'll get to hear a little bit about some impact stories there as well. So it's just a beautiful night. And at the center of any of our events are always that sense of community and fellowship. We never try to lose that, because that's so much a part of what we do outside of our walls. But I never talked about the beautiful community that is created inside of our walls. It's become a place for retirees. It's become a place for widows, a home away from home for college students. And the amount of lifelong friends that I've met here, something so special happens when you're in here, and you can just like feel this like contagious joy. And I would like to think like after you've spent some time in Hope Blooms, the next 5 people that you see are the direct beneficiaries of the joy that we were able to create together. So I think that we're having a big impact in our community through what happens within these walls too, and being this big now community like service hub for community activation. And if you've ever been to Hope Blooms, it's not a big space, but I feel like we have big love and big joy, and we want to help people celebrate that throughout our community.
Yeah, there's not an abundance of overstuffed chairs. I don't see 8 big screens up on the wall. There's not a lot of tables and things because it's a work area.
Exactly.
There's like workbenches directly behind me where the stuff gets done.
Well, and everything's been repurposed. Like that was a piece of plywood we had, and we cut it into this shape, and we used 2x4s here and there and everywhere. Everything's repurposed. Sure, I
thought that bottle of water tasted
exactly.
a little
I
funny.
used that once, Tom. Yeah.
Just fill it in the kitchen. So is the Petals for a Purpose date set?
Yes, it's April 10th.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a perfect opportunity to get out. That we're all going to have spring fever regardless of what the weather is. Yeah. So to come out and support Hope Blooms and, have a good time.
It's not held here, is it?
It's held at the Fargo Air Museum.
Oh, great place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Do you have music?
There'll be a social hour.
Your husband?
Yeah, I know. He does not have the gift of, his favorite thing is to like change the lyrics to things. So I just don't know if that would track on like a larger audience.
Not wireless. Honey, your goat.
Yeah, exactly. So, so tickets are available now, and we'd love to have you.
All righty. Well, I'm going to kind of bring it in here for a landing, as they say. The website, of course, is hopeblooms, all one word, .org. And the phone number here, if you want to get a hold of Kelly, Katie, really any of the volunteers, but the phone number here is 701-491-8821. And I promised Kelly I wouldn't give out her personal cell phone. That's certainly not wise. But I just recommend people, if we've struck a chord here somewhere, get a hold of Kelly here. And share this podcast because it's one of my favorite, and I've only done 4, but it's one of my favorites so far.
That's not bad odds for me.
Share the podcast. It's very easy to do. A couple of real quick questions for you. What is your favorite flower?
What is my favorite flower? I love the zinnia.
Ooh, nice.
I love zinnias. Oh.
Those are mine too. Maybe not my favorite, but I just love how they various sizes, shapes, colors, and they come back all the time.
Yeah.
It's great. I can't kill them.
I know, right? And you can cut. So like one of my favorite things to do in the summer is I have been cutting flowers from my own garden. And like if I'll have a meeting, you're going to want to schedule a meeting with me because you might just get a surprise bouquet of flowers in the summer from my own garden. So that's been so fun to just like do that on my own, but
You
I was
answered,
just looking for ways to always make people feel special. So
you answered my second question. If you had a garden at home, flowers at home, or I don't know
yes,
if you got home and just pulled the blinds and said, not for me, but that's cool. It's an extension of who you are.
yeah,
One story that came to mind, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but you've heard the old kind of cheesy starfish story,
yeah,
where you throw the starfish and it's not going to make a difference. Well, it did for that one person.
right.
And that's what I see Hope Bloom's doing with a bouquet, that one little arrangement that could go to somebody who just got some bad news.
Mhm.
And the kids live in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
They just got off a cell phone with them, and there's nobody around, but all of a sudden somebody pops in with
Yeah.
small arrangements. And so this is an amazing, I'll call it a ministry, and it absolutely is. And I can't thank you enough for inviting me over. Well, I kind of forced myself over. I
No,
invited
you're
myself
always
in,
invited.
especially to volunteer,
Yes.
which we'll pass around. But any last minute things, Kelly, that I've gone over, missed, that
Yeah.
you just want to talk about? We
Yeah.
have the website, we've got the phone number, but any
Well, I
last
just want to extend a huge heaps and heaps, I guess, of gratitude to our community, because I know I mentioned it before, but truly they're the reason that we can exist. I feel like Hope Blooms is a love letter to our community. And it's not lost on me that support it could be funneled anywhere. And we're just so grateful for the time and treasure and talents that people lend to us. So we can simply make someone's day, because I do believe that, we may not change the world, but I do believe that we can change people's lives.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
You're welcome, Kelly. Well, one last time, just again, the website is hopeblooms.org. You'll find all the information you want there. So, folks, we are recording this in the end of January. It's about 0 degrees outside, so it's a great day to be talking about flowers. So, Kelly, thank you, and
Thank you.
stay tuned next month for another exciting episode. You have been listening to More Than a Funeral, Voices of the Red River Valley. And I have been your host, Tom Pence, and I'm one of the funeral directors at Corsmo Funeral and Cremation Service here in Moorhead, Minnesota. The word service has been an intentional part of our name for over 66 years, and we pride ourselves on attention to detail and personal service. Personally, my responsibilities revolve around the advanced planning aspect of our profession, and I enjoy visiting with people as we discuss the many possibilities of a memorable celebration service that will eventually honor a life according to their wishes. And from a practical standpoint, which is getting so very important these days, I help families plan ahead so that the family left behind will not be burdened with a large financial responsibility, therefore allowing them to spend time with their family, remembering their loved one, not having to worry about how to handle the expenses. Asset protection is also a very real issue these days, as many care facilities can cost several $1,000s a month, depending upon the level of care. Corsmo can provide simple and effective ways of protecting those assets, and I welcome the opportunity to visit with you about that. If you enjoyed this podcast and found some value in it, we greatly appreciate your sharing with a friend. And if you have a moment, text somebody right now. Encourage them to give a listen and perhaps follow the podcast personally. We anticipate publishing a new episode on the first day of each month, so check back for interesting guests and topics. And of course, we also welcome your suggestions for future guests and topics of interest as well. So thank you for listening. And if you want more information and actually want some free estimates or just have questions, contact any of the directors at Corsmo Funeral and Cremation Service. Our phone number is 218-233-1533, and our web address is corsmofuneralservice.com. Thanks again for listening, and from all of us at Corsmo, have a great day.